I think it's right around today that marks the 10th anniversary of Pope Francis becoming the Pope. And like with so many popes, there's a lot of memorable lines that he's given. And one that always has struck with me and just sort of comes up in my mind once in a while is several years ago, maybe in his first year, Pope Francis was giving an interview to a magazine. And the interviewer asked him, "Who is Jorge Maria Bergoglio?" which is his name before becoming Pope. And so when he was asked, like, who really are you? He said, "I'm a sinner whom God has looked upon." That's all he said. "I'm a sinner whom God has looked upon." And we think, well, he's looked upon him in a pretty big way, becoming Pope and everything. But I think not only does that show Pope Francis's humility and just his authenticity, I think it's maybe a good line for all of humanity. I think we see this played out in our passage today about the Samaritan woman at the well. I think she can truly say, or had come to believe, that she was a sinner whom God has looked upon. Of course, when God looks upon us, it's not just like noticing us, like, oh, look at that guy over there. Because God is love, he looks upon us with eyes of love, with a gaze of love. And so we see this woman who's tried throughout her life to find love and to have that deep desire to satisfy like we all do. And she comes at noon, which is the hottest time of the day, but also the brightest time of the day, by herself to this well, and Jesus is already there. He's already there waiting for her. Last week, our passage was the transfiguration of the Lord, which we always hear that second Sunday of Lent. And maybe sometimes we think, God, wouldn't it be great if I had this mountaintop experience? And some people have had that, like on a retreat or something. But more often than not, Jesus is already there waiting for us in the midst of our everyday life, and even in the midst of the weight of the baggage that we carry sometimes in life. So she comes, and Jesus is there, and he loves her first, and he sees her first, and he speaks to her first. Because Jesus looks upon us with the eyes of love, he wants to bring us into this relationship with him that you and I, that every person was made for. This relationship that's so deep, so complete, so intimate, that it's really like that of a marriage. We see a lot of nuptial imagery in our passage today with the Samaritan woman at the well. Throughout the Old Testament, the patriarchs met their wives at a well. Jacob did this, Isaac did this, Moses did this. So that was the place to find a spouse, there at the well, the original watering hole, before they invented online dating and stuff like that. So for this woman to come and meet Jesus there at a well, he already kind of primes the pump for what Jesus had in store for her. Jesus tells her that if we ask, that his own life will become a spring of living water welling up within us. In Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 15, the bridegroom says of the bride that she's like a spring of living water. And of course, the nuptial imagery really hits home when he asks her about her relationship. She's had 5 husbands. She's now with someone who's not her husband. She's this Samaritan. Now it's a little history lesson here, so hold tight. So the Samaritans were part of the northern tribes of Israel, and the kingdom of Assyria invaded that northern part in 722 BC, and they carted off a bunch of the Israelites, but some were left behind. And so the Samaritans were the descendants of these poor Israelites who were left behind. And then the Assyrians brought in these other 5 kingdoms with whom they intermarried and started just worshiping their idols and things like that. Eventually, these Samaritans, little by little, got back to the practice of faith in the true God and the worship of the true God, but yet not in the way God had intended, not in the covenant that God had made with the people of Israel. So that's why they worship on this Mount Gerizim instead of Jerusalem, as the woman is referring to. So the Samaritans have a relationship with God, but not a covenant. And then in walks Jesus. So the number 7 in the Bible is very symbolic. It means perfection. It means completion. So this woman and her whole people had, in a sense, had 5 spouses, currently with someone who's not their spouse. And then Jesus walks in as man number 7 in her life, bringing her this completion, this perfection, this great wholeness of this relationship that God had made with them. So Jesus, in a sense, is not only trying to woo her, but her whole people back to this covenant relationship that God had always had in store for them. So too for us, to be able to say with Pope Francis, with the Samaritan woman at the well, I'm a sinner whom God has looked upon. But we don't need to say this despondently, but in a sense rejoicingly, because the Lord has looked upon us, you and me, with love. That with the Samaritan woman, he sees beyond the past and has a great future in store for us. This Jesus who finds you and I worth dying for. And so as we encounter Christ here in the Mass today, in word and sacrament, let's indeed rejoice that he is with us, that he offers us a share in his life, that he brings us, even here and now, into a great relationship of love.